Dear students, welcome to this lecture in Digital Logic and System Design. On the previous turn, we had seen a very simple computer design, a computer which has just three instructions, and those three instructions were different kinds of data move group of instructions. Now we will move on to a more realistic computer design in which not only data move but we'll also have arithmetic circuit, logic circuit, shifters, and so on. So let us begin with the processor registers in ALU connected by bus. So ALU is basically arithmetic logic unit which takes care of all the arithmetic functions as well as the logic functions. And this is the shifter circuit. So we will see the design of arithmetic logic unit and shifter a little later. Before that, let's see how the data move takes place in a processor containing arithmetic logic unit, shifter, and registers. So we can see that arithmetic logic unit is receiving two operands, one through the A bus and the other through the B bus, and they are directed by a 4:1 multiplexer, wherein the four inputs are four registers, scratch pad registers, or I can call them as a register file or a group of registers R0, R1, R2, R3. So depending on the select lines of these two multiplexers, one of these four registers will be selected to direct data at its output. Suppose the select line is 0, 0. In fact, this will be a couple of lines because this is a 4:1 multiplexer, and this is a 5:1 multiplexer, if you can see, right? So this will have three select lines. So I'm not showing exactly how many lines are there, but we can always make out. So if it is 0, 0, then R0 is directed to A. If it is 0, 1, then R1 is directed to A bus, and if it is 1, 0, then R2 is directed, and if it is 1, 1, then R3 is directed to A bus. Now over here we can see that if it is 0, 0, then R0 gets directed 0, 1, R2, R3, sorry, R0, R1, R2, R3 with 1, 1, and maybe with 1, 0, 0, we are taking data from some outer world as the input data, right? So this is the B select. So any one of these inputs at A bus and B bus will be available depending on the select lines A and B, right? So this will give me the arithmetic logic unit inputs. Now I must have a few control lines for controlling the functions that take place in the arithmetic logic unit, like whether I want to do addition or I want to do subtraction. Suppose I want to do addition with carry or subtraction with borrow, or I can just take a simple transfer of bus A without modifying it, or I can have incrementation, decrementation, all those different functions, arithmetic functions, and also logic functions like oring, anding, exclusive or simply a complement function. All those will happen depending on the function select lines. And again, this shifter will have shift select that will control whether I want to do a left shift of the ALU output, or a right shift, or circular shift, or serial shift. All those different combinations may be possible, or may even be shifting by more than one bit in a single clock cycle. So whatever be the shifter operation followed by the ALU operation, now your result is available. This result needs to be stored in any one of these registers, is available to be stored in any one of these registers, right? So now this destination select will decide which one of these registers are going to accept data, because any one of these lines will be high at a given point of time depending on the destination select and depending on the enable being available, right? When it is disabled, when this is disabled, data will just be available to the outer world as the outer data, and it will not be written into any one of these registers so as to save the overwriting of the contents of these registers. But suppose this is enable, then this destination select becomes active, and it will decide which one of these are going to receive. Suppose it is 0, 0, then the load for R0 will be active, so the shifter output data will go to R0. Suppose it is 1, 0, 1, then the shifter output will go to R1, 10 it will go to R2, and destination select being 11, the shifter output may be stored in R3, right? Again, suppose I don't want to do any shift, so I should also have a no shift operation here, so that just the ALU output gets stored without any shifting. Similarly, suppose I just want to do shifting with no ALU function, then the transfer should be available, so that A is transferred without any alteration as far as ALU function is concerned. So all this may be possible in this block diagram depending on the A select, B select, destination select, function select for ALU, and shift select for shifter. So they are basically forming the control lines for this processor register and ALU connected by bus. Let us move next to processor unit with a scratch pad memory. This is a logical successor of the previous block diagram, because what we are doing is that register file, I am replacing it by a scratch pad memory. In the previous diagram we have seen R0, R1, R2, R3. I put all these four together and I form a memory out of it, because a memory is basically on the functional level, it is a combination of several registers, right? So I'm replacing that by a scratch pad memory. When I say memory, it should have, I'm calling it a scratch pad memory just as I had a scratch pad register set, right? So in that sense, this is a scratch pad memory. So obviously the memory would like to have the address lines, because its address will decide which one of these locations have to be accessed for reading or writing. Depending on the control, read and write. Suppose I just want to do read and no write, then data will come out of it, right? And it will be routed through A and B multiplexers into the ALU, the same shifter. Function select, shift select, deciding whether I want to do addition or subtraction or incrementation, decrementation, whatever. Shifting, suppose I want to do no shift or shift left, shift right, circular, serial, all those possibilities will be there in the shifter circuit. And again the data gets routed back, and this select decides whether I want to store the data into the memory as the output of the ALU and shifter, or I want to accept data from the outer world. So accordingly, this multiplexer will direct data, and the scratch pad memory will store it by the address supplied over here. So this is how the scratch pad memory is going to replace the register file given in the previous block diagram. But I need to give addresses, I need to give read write controls correspondingly. Rest of the things more or less remain the same. The select line here, the select line here. Then the multiplexer gets simplified, right? This one gets in fact this is not a multiplexer, this will just be a register. This will just be a register. That is why I see the load control here, because the data is coming from just the output bus of the scratch pad memory, right? And this is also going to the external world as the output data. Suppose the load of both these are low, then the data is available at the outer world. It is not changing the contents of register A or B, right? So this gets simplified in that sense. Now this ALU will accept, and the rest of the thing remain the same, the function select, the shift select, and all. Now processor unit with a 2-port memory, right? Over here I have shown a block containing ALU and shifter together. I can always show it as separate blocks, but I've just combined them as the block level, and I've shown them as ALU and shifter. Correspondingly, I'll have more select lines here, ALU plus shifter select lines here. Now, 2-port memory, the data is available on 2 of its ports, right? So, in the previous case, suppose I want to store operand A, then I'll have to do it in 2 different clock cycles. First, I'll have to load operand A, and then I'll have to load operand B, because this is a single port scratch pad memory. So I'll have to load A and B in 2 clock cycles. It takes 2 clock cycles to get data into A and B separately. Over here, I have a 2-port memory, so data can come out on these 2 ports simultaneously, right? I can give A address, B address, so both those addresses will be fetched, and the contents at those 2 locations will come out into A and B respectively. This is memory enable, right? And this is write enable. Suppose I want to do the writing, then I can always ALU and shifter. I can supply the address, right? And I can do the writing also. So this clock pulse, it's it synchronizes these registers A and B, and it also synchronizes the memory, right? So that is how this clock pulse, it this is active low for write enable, and this is active high for registers A and B, right? So what I can do, I can load A and B in the positive edge of the clock, and I can do the writing as a result of ALU and shifter in the negative part of the clock, right? And that makes sense because reading and writing should not be simultaneous, so that there is no inconsistency of data. If reading and writing is simultaneously, you never know whether writing took place earlier or reading took place earlier, so the data gets ambiguous. What data have been written, you cannot say it for sure. That is why we are putting them in active low and active high mode, right? Active high is meant for reading out of the scratchpad memory, and active low is meant for writing into the scratchpad memory. So they are out of phase in that sense. They are happening in a mutually exclusive fashion, right? When reading takes place, writing doesn't take place, and when writing takes place, reading doesn't take place. So that it is exclusive read and exclusive write mode, and not concurrent read and concurrent write mode, right? So that is how a two port memory helps, because data can be loaded into A and B in a single clock cycle. Processor with an accumulator register. In one of the earlier lectures, I have given a passing reference. I've made a passing reference for an accumulator register. Accumulator register is a scratchpad register, all right, but then it has some extra privilege and extra functions in it, right? Which we will see here. Firstly, the accumulator register becomes an implicit register. I may not necessarily state that the result has to go into accumulator. It will come into accumulator automatically, right? If you remember when we were seeing the the simple computer design, the all the three operations that we had taken, they were move R, LDI OPRD, and LDA ADRS. So nowhere I had mentioned accumulator explicitly. Move R, it was implicit that the data has to be moved from the register R into the accumulator A, even though I was not specifying A anywhere. I was just specifying R. So the data was implicitly coming into A. Similarly, when I say LDI OPRD, load immediate operand, so I meant to say that operand OPRD has to come into accumulator, even though I was not mentioning accumulator explicitly. So that way accumulator register enjoys a special privilege because this is connected to ALU output. So we have the input data, processor registers or memory unit, whatever way you want to put it. You can have either an array of register files, as we have seen in this block diagram, this block diagram, or I can have the memory as I had seen in this block diagram, right? So, but I need not have a two port memory. A simple scratchpad memory will do, because the memory or the register file is just supplying the B operand to ALU. The A operand comes out of the accumulator itself. So that way accumulator enjoys not only the destination privilege, but also as the privilege of being one of the operands as well. Okay. So if I say, suppose I say add R, suppose there is a processor which has got the instruction add R. So that means add the contents of register R to register A and store it in register A. So I'm just mentioning R, but one of the operands, implicitly gets to be R, and its destination also gets to be, one of the operands get to be A, and the destination also implicitly gets to be A, right? So accumulator invariably always supplies the operand A. So A and the data at the B bus coming from either the register files or the memory unit, that is processed in the ALU and shifter, of course, that is also mixed here, and the result goes into the accumulator register, which is always enabled for reading, for loading. Now this is available not only as the output data but goes back here. This will have the select lines for B source, which of these registers or which of the location of the memory, that will be supplied by the select B source. So this will be the block diagram for a processor with a special type of scratch pad register, which will be called the accumulator register, right? Now let us move on to the design of a 4-bit ALU, arithmetic logic unit. We all know that a computer is essentially three blocks put together: a CPU, a memory, and an input output unit, right? Memory for storage, CPU does all the processing, and IO is meant for interfacing with the external world, how to accept data from the external world, the input devices, or to output data to the output devices. That's too preliminary, you already know from your school days, so I'm not going to get into it. CPU is again in two parts, right? CPU is in two parts: the arithmetic logic unit and the timing and control unit. So right now we are studying the arithmetic logic unit. We will later see timing and control unit. Although we had seen the timing and control unit briefly in the design of a simple computer, a timer with 3 bits, 3 to 8 decoder giving raising one of the timer signals high, T0 to T7, and then the control unit is supplying one of the Q1, Q2, Q3 as we saw on the previous turn. So we will see that in detail. Let us now concentrate on the design of the arithmetic logic unit. This is the block diagram. This is operand A. I'm talking about 4-bit in order to make things simpler. It can be n-bit ALU also. In that case, I'll have A1, A2, so on up till AN, B1, B2, so on up till BN, and F1, F2, so on up till FN. But right now, let us see a 4-bit ALU. So B1 to B4 as the B bus, A1 to A4 as the A bus. Then output, 4-bit output, F1, F2, F3, F4, 4-bit output, and an output carry. A carry may be there. Suppose I want to add both of them, there may be a bit going out as the output carry. Now they are the modes. This is the mode select S2, which will decide whether I want to do the arithmetic functions or I want to do the logic functions. With S2 being 0, I want to do, suppose, arithmetic functions. With S2 being 1, I want to do logic functions. S1, S0 and Cin, they will decide what function select I want to do. S1, S0, that will decide whether I want to do addition or subtraction. Cin will add to it to decide whether I want to do addition with carry or subtraction with borrow, right? Cin will become, don't care when I talk about logic functions. And also Cout will become don't care when I talk about logic functions, because in logic function there is no concept of input carry or output carry. So both Cin and Cout will become don't care when we talk about logic unit, but they are important when we talk about arithmetic functions, right? So S1, S0 will decide which of the arithmetic or logic functions I'm talking about depending on S2. With S2 being low, I will have the functions from arithmetic set. With S2 being high, I'll have functions from the logic set. And Cin will become active or become important when I talk about arithmetic functions. And it will not be important, it will be don't care when I talk about logic functions. So this is pretty much the block diagram of a 4-bit ALU. Right. So now let us see how do we go about designing this block diagram. Right. Let us consider a parallel adder. That may be a 4-bit adder for our example, or that may be an n-bit adder for a generic case. Suppose to this parallel adder, I am supplying some data A and B over here. Cin suppose is 0 and Cout is available. So this, what will parallel adder do? It will simply add A plus B. It is a parallel adder. So if they are n-bit function, n-bit data, then it is going to add those n-bit data and will provide the n-bit output F. Now suppose the same parallel adder, but Cin is made 1. So this becomes A plus B plus 1, because this carry in over here was 0, carry in here is 1. So this will become a plus b plus 1. What is this? This is addition with carry. This was simple addition a plus b, but a plus b plus 1 becomes addition with carry, right? Now the same parallel ladder, the same arrangement, right? But what I'm doing here is I am adding a with b bar. This is b bar, right? So this becomes a plus b bar with c in is equal to 0, okay? And which will essentially be a plus 1's complement of b. Why I'm doing this, you will understand. First, let us consider d. This d accordingly will be a plus b bar plus 1, because c in is 1 now. Just as over here it was a plus b plus 1. In this case, here it will be a plus b bar plus 1, right? So a bar plus b bar plus 1, what is it? B bar plus 1 becomes 2's complement of b, right? B bar plus 1 is just as b bar is 1's complement of b, as we have seen here, a plus 1's complement of b, b bar plus 1 will be 2's complement of b. And a plus 2's complement of b is nothing but a minus b, which is subtraction, right? So if a bar plus b bar plus 1 is a plus 2's complement of b, which is equal to a minus b subtraction, a plus b bar will be subtraction with borrow, right? A plus b bar will be subtraction with borrow. You can either put it as a plus 1's complement of b, or you can say subtraction with borrow. Just as this was addition and this was addition with carry, if this is subtraction, this will be subtraction with borrow, right? Now next, I make all the bits at b terminal as 0, and c is also 0. So f will simply be a, because a plus 0 will be a. But if this is a, this is 0, but c in is 1, then it becomes a plus 1, increment a, right? So see, by varying different by having different varying combinations, I am getting different functions coming out of the same parallel ladder and the same arrangement. So this is transfer a, and this will be increment a plus 1. Now this is interesting. This is interesting. This is a, but they are all ones. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. As many bits as the number are there in the parallel adder. If I'm talking about a 4-bit parallel adder, so this will be a plus 1, 1, 1, 1, right? And Cn is still 0. So for a moment, believe me that this is a minus 1. I'll just prove in the next slide why this is a minus 1. I'll come to it. But suppose it is a minus 1, then in this case, it will become a minus 1 plus 1, because Cn is 1 now, right? So all ones over here will give you a minus 1, and this Cn when added will give you a minus 1 plus 1, which will be a. So if it is a minus 1, this will be a, right? Now let us see in the next slide how adding a to all ones leaves me with a minus 1. You can take a few examples also. Take a 4-bit binary number, any 4-bit binary number arbitrarily, and to it add all ones and discard the carry. You will see that if you take all ones like 1, 1, 1, 1 and add 1, 1, 1, 1 to it, right? So you will get 1, 1, 1, 0, which is 14. So you started with 15 and you got 14. So it has become 1 less, which is decrementation. Let us prove it now. Decrement operation. This was the arrangement, all ones, a all ones, c is 0. When the output carry is 1, it represents the number 2n, because 2n in binary consists of a 1 followed by n zeros. You agree with it? You know it from the very first unit. 2n means in binary it consists of a 1 followed by n zeros. Now subtracting 1 from 2n, we obtain 2n minus 1, which in binary is a number of n ones, right? Suppose I write 16. 16 will be 1 followed by 4 zeros. If I subtract 1 from it, it will become 4 ones, 1, 1, 1, 1, right? That is what it means. Adding 2 to the power n minus 1 to a. So all ones, what does it mean? All ones means 2n minus 1, 2 to the power n minus 1. If it is an n-bit parallel adder, right? That is what we have shown here. 2n in binary consists of a 1 followed by n0. Subtracting n from 2n, we obtain 2n minus 1, which in binary is a number of n ones, right? All ones means n ones, which is 2n minus 1. Now if you add 2 to the power n minus 1 to a, so I am essentially adding 2 to the power n minus 1 to a in the parallel adder. We obtain f is equal to a plus 2 to the power n minus 1. F is equal to a plus 2 to the power n minus 1. All ones is 2 to the power n minus 1, which is 2 to the power n plus a minus 1, just rearranging them, right? 2 to the power n plus a minus 1. If the output, now to what is 2 n? 2 to the power n is the output carry. So if you discard it or remove it, what we are left with is a minus 1. See? So adding a with 2 to the power n minus 1 and discarding the output carry leaves us with a minus 1, which is decrementation, right? We obtain f is equal to a minus 1. To demonstrate with a numerical example, let n be 8 and a be 9, right? So a is represented in 8 bits like this: 1 0 0 1 0 0 0 0, right? N is equal to 8, that is why with 8 bits, and a is equal to 9, that is why I am representing 9 in 8 bits. Now 2 to the power n will be 1 followed by 8 zeros, that is what we have shown here. 1 followed by n zeros, so n zeros means 8 zeros, 1 followed by 8 zeros, which is 256 in base 10. Now 2 to the power n minus 1, if you subtract 1 from it, you will be left with 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1, all ones, this case all ones, which is 255 in base 10. Obviously 1 less will be 255 in base 10. Now a plus 2 to the power n minus 1, you add, right? A plus 2 to the power n minus 1, you add these two. You add these two. What you are left with? 1 plus 1 is 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is a 1 with a carry 1. Right? Right? And then, yeah. Right? So if you just add all ones to it, 1 plus 1 will be 0. So this becomes 256 plus 8 in base 10. Now this 256, this particular one, yeah, okay, fine, very good. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is a 1 with a carry 1. Now 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. 1 plus 1 is a 0 with a carry 1. So this carry is reflected here. If you discard this carry, what you are left with is 8. Right? So you started with 9 and you are left with 8. 256 gets discarded. 9 becomes 8, which is 9 minus 1. Removing the output carry, we obtain 8 is equal to 9 minus 1. Thus we have decremented a by 1 by adding it to a binary number with all ones. Okay. The only condition is that these ones should be as many ones as the number of bits in A and the parallel adder and the F, right? If it is a 4-bit parallel adder, you should have 4 ones. If it is an 8-bit parallel adder, it should be 8 ones. If it is n-bit parallel adder, there should be n ones in it. In that sense, these two are different. See, Cin is equal to 1, making Cin is equal to 1 and making this 0 means a plus a single bit at the least significant bit. Keep that in mind, right? Whereas over here, this is a plus all ones with Cin is equal to 0. So these two cases, this case, see, this case and this case are different. They are different cases. This is just a single bit added to LSB. These are all bits as ones, right? So that is why this is giving me incrementation and this is giving me decrementation. This giving incrementation is pretty straightforward. This giving me incrementation is pretty straightforward because a plus a 1 at the LSB, this being 0, a plus 0 plus 1 will be a plus 1. Whereas here it will be a plus 1 1 1 1 1 1 plus 0, right? So plus 0 doesn't make any difference, but a plus 1 1 1 1 1 1, as I have proved in this slide, is going to give me a decrement operation. Whatever I start with, it will be one less than that. Okay, so that is how this parallel adder gives me a lot of different arithmetic functions, as you can see for yourself. It gives me addition, it gives me addition with carry, it gives me subtraction, it gives me subtraction with borrow, it gives me transfer, it gives me transfer means no change, it gives me incrementation, it gives me decrementation, it gives me transfer again. So you see all the pretty much all the different arithmetic functions that I'm looking for, I'm able to get over here using just the parallel adder with B and C in being varied. C in can be varied with 0, 1 only because they are that is a single bit. But B can have the true form, which is B, or a complement form, which is B bar, as we see in this row, or it can be a 0, all zeros, or it can be all ones. So all the different combinations are possible using the using the same parallel ladder, right? So we will stop here for today. Just try to absorb all the different combinations that we have seen in the parallel adder and the resulting arithmetic functions out of it, and we will continue with the design of the arithmetic circuit from here on in the next lecture. Thank you very much.